Lena Carter stood in the rain outside her sister's engagement party, staring through the window at the man she'd loved for 3 years, now kissing someone else. The wedding invitation in her hand disintegrated in the downpour, ink bleeding like her dignity. She didn't know that the sleek black car idling behind her carried the most dangerous man in the city. She didn't know he was watching. She didn't know that her invisible life was about to collide with his empire of shadows, and that betrayal would be the doorway to something far more terrifying than heartbreak. This is Lena's story. Stay until the end, hit like, and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights in the hospital corridor buzzed with the same tired frequency as Lena's thoughts. 3 a.m. Somewhere between the medication cart and room 412, she'd stopped noticing the ache in her feet, the way her scrubs stuck to her back, the metallic smell of disinfectant that clung to everything. "Lena, Mr. Patterson needs a bed change in 408. The night nurse barely looked up from her clipboard. On it. That was her life. 2 words: efficient, forgettable. She moved through the hallway like a ghost in blue scrubs, dodging the glances of doctors who never learned her name, stepping aside for nurses who did. Invisible wasn't something that happened to her. It was something she'd perfected. Blend in. Don't take up space. Survive. Her phone buzzed in her pocket as she stripped the soiled sheets from Mr. Patterson's bed. The old man slept through it, mouth open, machines beeping their steady rhythm. She pulled out her phone with one gloved hand. A text from her mother. "Did you get the invitation?" Lena's stomach twisted. She knew what invitation. It had arrived 3 days ago in a cream-colored envelope with gold lettering. She'd shoved it under a stack of bills on her kitchen counter and pretended it didn't exist. Another text. "Sophia wants to know if you're coming. She's worried you're upset." Lena almost laughed. Worried. Right. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, then stopped. What could she possibly say? Congratulations on stealing the only man I've ever loved? Hope the wedding's beautiful? Thanks for the reminder that I don't matter? She pocketed the phone and finished changing the sheets. By the time her shift ended at 7 a.m., the city was already awake and indifferent. Lena walked 3 blocks to the bus stop, her body screaming for sleep, her mind too wired to rest. The morning commuters pushed past her, suits and briefcases, coffee cups and purpose. She stood at the edge of the sidewalk and waited. The apartment she returned to wasn't really a home. It was a 4th-floor walk-up with walls so thin she could hear her neighbor's television through the plaster. The kitchen was a hot plate and a microwave. The bedroom was just big enough for a twin mattress and a dresser she'd found on the curb. But it was hers. She paid for it. No one could take it away. She kicked off her shoes, peeled off her scrubs, and stood under a lukewarm shower until her skin turned pink. Then she crawled into bed and tried to sleep. The invitation haunted her. She lasted 2 hours before giving up. The sun was too bright through the thin curtains, and her mind wouldn't stop replaying the same scene. Ethan's smile, Sophia's laugh, the way they'd looked at each other when Sophia brought him home for the first time. "This is Ethan," Sophia had said, glowing with that effortless confidence Lena had never possessed. "We met at a gallery opening." Lena had been washing dishes. She'd turned, hands still soapy, and met his eyes, dark and warm and startlingly direct. He'd smiled at her first. Not at Sophia. At her. "Nice to meet you, Lena." He'd said her name like it mattered. That was 3 years ago, before Sophia decided she wanted him, before their mother started planning engagement brunches. Before Lena realized that wanting something didn't mean she'd ever get to keep it, she dragged herself out of bed and made instant coffee. The apartment felt smaller in daylight. She could cross from the kitchen to the bedroom in 6 steps. The bathroom door didn't close all the way. The window overlooked a brick wall. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from her mother. "Sophia's dress fitting is Saturday. She wants you there." Of course she did. Sophia wanted an audience for everything. Lena typed back, "I'm working." The response came immediately. "You're always working." "She's your sister." Lena stared at the screen. Her thumb hovered over the reply button, then moved to the delete icon instead. She erased the entire conversation and set her phone face down on the counter. The next 3 days blurred together. Work, sleep, work. She picked up an extra shift to avoid Sophia's calls. She stopped answering her mother's texts. She told herself it didn't matter, that she'd gotten good at not mattering. But Friday night, when her shift ended and she walked toward the bus stop in the rain, the weight of it finally cracked something inside her. The bus was late. Of course it was. Lena stood under the thin shelter, rain dripping off the edge, soaking her shoes. Her scrubs clung to her legs, her hair stuck to her face. Across the street, she could see a couple laughing under an umbrella, their arms tangled together, their world small and warm and closed off from everything else. She looked away. When the bus finally came, it was nearly empty. She climbed on, paid her fare, and collapsed into a seat near the back. Her body ached, her eyes burned. She pressed her forehead against the cold window and watched the city slide past, neon signs and dark alleys, closed shops and corner bars. She almost missed her stop. The bus lurched to a halt, and she stumbled to her feet, grabbing the pole to steady herself. The driver called out something she didn't catch. She pushed toward the door, her bag slipping off her shoulder, her keys jangling in her pocket. And then she tripped. It wasn't dramatic. Her foot caught on the edge of a seat, her balance tilted, and she went down hard, one knee slamming into the floor, her bag spilling open, everything scattering across the aisle. Lip balm, loose change, the crumpled wedding invitation she'd shoved in there days ago. Shit. She scrambled to gather it all, heat flooding her face. "Let me help." The voice came from behind her, low, smooth, with an accent she couldn't quite place. She looked up. The man standing over her wasn't the kind of person you forgot. Tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair slicked back and a suit that probably cost more than her rent. His eyes were pale gray, almost silver, and they fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I'm fine." She grabbed the lip balm and shoved it into her bag. "You're bleeding." She glanced down. Her knee was scraped, a thin line of blood seeping through her scrubs. She hadn't even felt it. "It's nothing." But he was already crouching beside her, his movements controlled and deliberate. He picked up the invitation, the fancy cream paper now smudged and bent, and held it out to her. "This yours?" She snatched it from his hand faster than she meant to. "Yeah." He didn't move, just stayed there, crouched at her level, studying her like she was a puzzle he wanted to solve. Behind him, she noticed two other men standing near the front of the bus, both watching, both silent, both wearing the same kind of expensive suits. "You should clean that." He nodded toward her knee. "I will." She stood, clutching her bag to her chest. "Thanks." She pushed past him toward the door, her heart pounding for reasons she couldn't explain. The bus doors hissed open and she stepped out into the rain. But as she walked away, she felt it, his gaze, heavy and deliberate, tracking her every step. She didn't look back. The apartment greeted her with silence. She locked the door, dropped her bag, and stood in the middle of the tiny kitchen, dripping water onto the linoleum. Her hands were shaking. She didn't know why. The fall had been nothing. The man on the bus, just some stranger. But something about the way he'd looked at her, the way he'd said, "You're bleeding," like it mattered, like she mattered. She shook her head and pulled out her phone. The invitation was still in her bag. She took it out, smoothed it against the counter, and stared at the gold script. "Sophia Carter and Ethan Cross request the honor of your presence." Her vision blurred. She blinked hard, but the tears came anyway, hot and angry and humiliating. She crumpled the invitation in her fist and threw it across the room. It landed near the door, unfolding slightly, mocking her. She sank onto the floor and pressed her palms against her eyes. 3 years. She'd spent 3 years loving Ethan from the edges of his life. 3 years watching him laugh at Sophia's jokes, hold Sophia's hand, look at Sophia like she was the only person in the room. And Lena had stayed quiet. Because that's what she did. She stayed quiet. She stayed small. She stayed invisible. Her phone buzzed. She ignored it. It buzzed again. She picked it up, ready to throw it, but stopped when she saw the name on the screen. Sophia. The call rang twice before Lena answered. "Hey." Sophia's voice was bright, oblivious. "Did you get my texts?" "I've been working." I know, you're always working." Sophia laughed, that easy, careless sound that used to make Lena smile. But listen, the dress fitting is tomorrow, and I really need you there. Mom's driving me crazy, and you're the only one who can deal with her. Lena closed her eyes. Sophia, please? It's important. I want my sister there. Your sister. The words felt hollow. I'll think about it. Lena, come on. Don't be like this. Like what? There was a pause. Then Sophia sighed, and Lena could practically see her rolling her eyes. Forget it. I'll text you the address. Just show up, okay? The line went dead. Lena sat there, staring at the phone in her hand, feeling the familiar weight of expectation settle over her like a wet blanket. She should say no. She should delete the text, block Sophia's number, and move on with her life. But she wouldn't, because that wasn't who she was. She was the one who showed up, the one who bent, the one who disappeared so other people could shine. She dragged herself off the floor and into the bathroom. Her reflection in the mirror looked worse than she felt. Pale skin, dark circles, limp hair. She turned on the faucet and splashed cold water on her face. Tomorrow. She'd deal with it tomorrow. But tonight, she let herself break. The next morning arrived too fast. Lena woke to sunlight cutting through the curtains and a headache pounding behind her eyes. She reached for her phone. 10:30. The dress fitting was at noon. She groaned and buried her face in the pillow. For a long moment, she considered not going. She could text Sophia, say she got called in for a shift, apologize and spend the day in bed. It would be easy, safe. But her mother's voice echoed in her head. She's your sister. Lena dragged herself into the shower. An hour later, she stood outside a bridal boutique in the nice part of town, staring at the window display. White lace and tulle, mannequins frozen in eternal grace. She felt absurdly out of place in her jeans and old jacket, her hair pulled into a messy ponytail. She pushed open the door. Inside, the boutique smelled like lavender and money. Soft music played. A chandelier sparkled overhead. And there, in the center of the room, stood Sophia. Radiant in a white gown, surrounded by their mother, 2 bridesmaids, and a sales associate holding a pincushion. Lena! Sophia's face lit up. You came! Their mother turned, her expression carefully neutral. You're late. Sorry. Lena hovered near the door. Traffic. Sophia waved it off and spun in a slow circle. What do you think? I'm between this one and the mermaid style. Lena looked at her sister, tall, blonde, glowing with the kind of happiness that seemed effortless. Sophia had always been the sun, and Lena had always been the shadow. It's beautiful. Right? Sophia beamed. Ethan's going to lose his mind. The mention of his name was a knife between Lena's ribs. She forced a smile. Yeah. Come here. I want your opinion on the veil. Lena crossed the room, her sneakers squeaking on the polished floor. Sophia grabbed her hand and pulled her close, chattering about lace and beading and whether the train was too long. Lena nodded at the right moments. She smiled when expected. She played her part. But inside, she was screaming, Lena? Sophia's voice pulled her back. You okay? Fine. Sophia's eyes narrowed slightly. You've been weird lately. I'm just tired. You're always tired. Sophia squeezed her hand. I miss you. We never hang out anymore. Lena wanted to laugh. They didn't hang out because Sophia's entire life revolved around Ethan now. Because every conversation ended with wedding plans. Because Lena couldn't stand to be in the same room as them without wanting to disappear. But she didn't say that. She said, I know. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Just be there, okay? The wedding's in 6 weeks, and I need my maid of honor to actually show up. Maid of honor. Right. Because of course Lena was the maid of honor. Of course she'd be standing at the altar, watching her sister marry the man she loved. I'll be there. Sophia smiled, satisfied, and turned back to the mirror. Lena stayed for another hour, nodding, agreeing, pretending. When it was finally over, she escaped onto the sidewalk and sucked in a lungful of cold air. Her phone buzzed, a text from Sophia. Thanks for coming. Love you. Lena shoved the phone in her pocket and started walking. She didn't have a plan. She just needed to move. She walked past coffee shops and bookstores, through neighborhoods she couldn't afford, toward nowhere in particular. By the time she looked up, the sun was setting, and she was standing outside a bar she didn't recognize. The sign above the door was half burned out. Max. She went inside. The bar was dimly lit and half empty. A couple of old men sat at the counter nursing beers. A jukebox played something low and mournful in the corner. Lena slid onto a bar stool and ordered a whiskey. The bartender, a woman with gray streaks in her hair and tired eyes, poured her a double without asking. Rough day? Something like that. The whiskey burned on the way down. Lena ordered another. By the third drink, the edges of the world had softened. Her head felt light, her chest less tight. She stared at her reflection in the mirror behind the bar and barely recognized herself. Lena? She turned, and there he was, Ethan. He stood a few feet away holding a beer, looking just as surprised as she felt. His dark hair was tousled, his button-down untucked, his smile uncertain. Hey, he said. I didn't know you came here. I don't. Me neither. Some guys from work wanted to grab a drink. He gestured vaguely toward a booth in the back. What are you doing here? Drinking. He laughed, but it sounded forced. Yeah, I can see that. They stood there in awkward silence. Lena wanted to leave, but her legs felt heavy, and the whiskey had dulled her ability to care. Can I sit? Ethan gestured to the empty stool beside her. It's a free country. He sat, ordered another beer. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then Ethan said, Sophia told me you came to the dress fitting. Yep. She was happy you were there. Good for her. Ethan turned to look at her, his expression unreadable. Are you okay? Lena laughed, a short, bitter sound. Why wouldn't I be? I don't know. You just seem different. Different how? He hesitated. Distant. She wanted to scream. She wanted to grab him by the collar and ask him why. Why Sophia? Why not her? Why did she have to be the one who disappeared? But instead, she drained her glass and set it down carefully on the bar. I'm fine, Ethan. Lena, I'm happy for you. Really. You and Sophia are perfect together. The words tasted like ash. Ethan looked at her for a long moment, and for a second, just a second, she thought she saw something flicker in his eyes. Regret, maybe. Or pity. Then it was gone. Thanks, he said quietly. That means a lot. Lena stood. The room tilted slightly, but she steadied herself. I should go. Let me give you a ride. I'm fine. Lena, I said I'm fine. She walked out before he could argue. The cold air hit her like a slap. She stood on the sidewalk, swaying slightly, trying to remember which direction led to the bus stop. Her phone buzzed. Sophia again. She turned it off. She started walking, her vision blurred, her thoughts tangled. She didn't know where she was going. She didn't care. She just needed to move. Somewhere behind her, a car engine purred, low and expensive. Headlights washed over her, but she didn't turn around. Lena. The voice stopped her cold. She turned. The sleek black car from the bus was idling at the curb, and the man with the silver eyes was leaning out the window, watching her with that same unsettling intensity. You're drunk, he said. So? So, get in. I don't even know you. His mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Alessandro De Luca. Now you do. I'm not getting in a car with a stranger. Then walk. But if you collapse in the street, I'm picking you up anyway. Lena stared at him, her head spinning. She should leave. She should run. But something about the certainty in his voice, the way he looked at her like she was worth noticing, she opened the door and got in. The leather seat was cool against her back. The car smelled like expensive cologne and something darker, power maybe, or danger. Lena pressed herself against the door, her fingers finding the handle, holding on like it might save her. Alessandro didn't look at her. He just pulled away from the curb, smooth and unhurried, like picking up drunk women off the street was something he did every Tuesday. Where do you live? Lena's tongue felt thick. Why do you care? Because I'm taking you home. I didn't ask you to. No, you didn't. His voice was calm, almost amused, and it pissed her off. She turned to glare at him, but the motion made her head spin. She closed her eyes and leaned back. 4th and Maple, she muttered. The building with the broken mailbox. Noted. Silence settled between them, broken only by the hum of the engine and the occasional swish of passing cars. Lena cracked one eye open and studied him. In the dim light, his profile was sharp, strong jaw, straight nose, the kind of face that belonged on old money or movie screens. His hands on the steering wheel were relaxed, confident. He drove like someone who'd never had to worry about running out of gas or getting pulled over. "You were on the bus," she said. "I was." "Why?" "Wrong place, wrong time." "Bullshit, you don't ride the bus." His mouth twitched. "Observant." "So why were you there?" He glanced at her then, just for a second, and those silver eyes cut through the haze in her head. "Does it matter?" "Yeah, it does." He didn't answer, just turned his attention back to the road and drove. Lena's apartment building appeared too soon, 4 stories of peeling paint and cracked concrete. Alessandro pulled up to the curb and put the car in park. He didn't turn off the engine. "This is you?" "Yeah." She reached for the door handle. "Thanks for the ride." "Wait." She paused, hand on the door. Alessandro shifted in his seat to face her fully. Up close, he was even more unsettling, not because he was threatening, but because he wasn't. He looked at her like she was a problem he wanted to solve, not a mess he wanted to avoid. "You're going to feel like hell tomorrow," he said. "I already feel like hell." "Then don't make it worse. Drink water. Take aspirin. Sleep." Lena laughed, a short, sharp sound. "You don't even know me." "I know enough." "Yeah, what's that?" He leaned back, his gaze steady. "You're hurting, and you're too proud to ask for help." The words hit harder than they should have. Lena looked away, her throat tight. "I'm fine." "You're not. You don't know anything about me." "Maybe not." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card, thick, matte black with silver lettering. He held it out to her. "But if you need something, call." She stared at the card. "I'm not calling you." "Your choice." She took it anyway, more out of reflex than intent, and shoved it into her pocket. Then she opened the door and stumbled out onto the sidewalk. Alessandro watched her through the open window. "Lena." She turned. "Lock your door." She didn't respond. Just walked toward the building, her legs unsteady, her head swimming. Behind her, the car idled for another moment before pulling away, the engine's purr fading into the night. Inside her apartment, Lena collapsed onto the couch and stared at the ceiling. Her phone was still off. Her scrubs were still damp from the rain. The wedding invitation was still crumpled on the floor. She pulled the business card from her pocket and held it up to the light. Alessandro De Luca, private consulting. No phone number. No address. Just a name and a title that meant nothing. She set it on the coffee table and closed her eyes. Sleep didn't come easy. When it did, it was fractured. Flashes of Ethan's face, Sophia's laugh, silver eyes watching her from the shadows. She woke up at 4 a.m. with a pounding headache and a mouth that tasted like regret. She drank water, took aspirin, went back to bed. When she woke again, it was noon, and her phone was buzzing with notifications. She turned it on and immediately regretted it. 7 missed calls from Sophia, 3 from her mother, a dozen texts. "Where are you? Why aren't you answering? We need to talk about the seating chart." "Lena, seriously, call me back." She silenced her phone and dragged herself into the shower. The next few days were a blur of work and avoidance. She picked up extra shifts, ignored her family's calls, and tried to forget about the man in the black car. But the business card stayed on her coffee table, a small reminder that someone, anyone, had looked at her like she mattered. On Thursday night, her shift ended at 11, and she walked to the bus stop under a sky-threatening rain. The streets were quieter than usual, the kind of empty that made her hyper-aware of every sound, footsteps, car engines, the distant wail of a siren. She was halfway to the stop when she heard it. Voices, low and sharp, coming from the alley to her left. She should have kept walking, should have minded her own business, but something in the tone, aggressive, threatening, made her pause. I said I don't have it. The second voice was younger, scared. Then you shouldn't have borrowed it. Lena peered into the alley. 3 men stood around a fourth. A kid, maybe 19, backed against the wall with his hands up. One of the men held a knife, casual and ready. Her heart kicked into overdrive. She pulled out her phone, finger shaking, and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? There's a fight, 4th and Brennan, the alley behind the pawn shop. Someone has a knife. Officers are on the way. Stay on the line. A hand closed around her wrist. Lena yelped and spun around. One of the men from the alley, tall, broad, with a scar running down his cheek, glared at her. You calling the cops? Let go of me. He twisted her wrist and the phone clattered to the pavement. You should mind your own business. Panic flooded her. She yanked back, but his grip tightened. I said, let go. Is there a problem? The voice came from behind her, calm, cold, familiar. The man's expression shifted. His grip loosened. Lena pulled free and stumbled back, her wrist throbbing. Alessandro stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, his posture relaxed. But there was nothing relaxed about the look in his eyes. No problem, the man said quickly. Just a misunderstanding. Didn't look like one. The man glanced back at the alley, then at Alessandro, then at Lena. Whatever he saw in Alessandro's face made his decision for him. He backed away, hands raised. We're done here. He disappeared into the alley. A moment later, the other men followed, dragging the kid with them. Lena stood there, shaking, her breath coming too fast. Alessandro picked up her phone and handed it to her. You okay? She nodded, even though she wasn't. Come on. He started walking toward the street. I'm taking you home. I can take the bus. Not tonight. She didn't argue. She followed him to the black car parked at the curb, same one as before, and got in. They drove in silence for a while. Lena pressed her hands together to stop them from shaking. How did you know I was there? She finally asked. I didn't. Then why? I was nearby. That's not an answer. Alessandro glanced at her, his expression unreadable. Do you always ask this many questions? Do you always show up out of nowhere? His mouth curved slightly. Only when it matters. Lena didn't know what to say to that. She turned her attention to the window, watching the city blur past. When they reached her building, Alessandro didn't leave the car running this time. He turned off the engine and looked at her. That wasn't random, he said. What? Those men, they weren't just mugging some kid. That was a collection. Lena frowned. A collection? Debt. The kid owed money to someone, and they were there to collect. He paused. You could have gotten hurt. So? So don't be stupid, she bristled. I'm not stupid. I called the cops. And then you got involved. His voice was sharper now, edged with something she couldn't name. You think those men wouldn't have hurt you? You think a phone call would have stopped them? I couldn't just walk away. Why not? Because... She stopped, her throat tight. Because no one else was going to help him. Alessandro studied her, his gaze intense. Then he leaned back and sighed. You're going to get yourself killed. I'm fine. You're reckless. And you're bossy. That startled a laugh out of him, short and rough but real. Yeah, I am. They sat there for a moment, the tension easing. Then Alessandro reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a small black phone. He handed it to her. What's this? A phone. I have a phone. Not one that connects directly to me. He held her gaze. If something happens, you call. I'll come. Lena stared at the phone in her hand. Why are you doing this? Because you need someone watching out for you. I don't need anyone. Everyone needs someone. He opened his door. Lock your door, Lena. He was gone before she could respond. Lena sat in the silence, the phone heavy in her hand. She turned it over, examining it. No apps, no contacts. Just one number programmed in. Alessandro. She pocketed it and went inside. Over the next week, her life took on a strange new rhythm. She worked her shifts, avoided her family, and pretended the phone in her pocket didn't exist. But it was always there. A weight, a reminder, a temptation. She didn't call. On Saturday, Sophia showed up at her apartment unannounced. Lena opened the door to find her sister standing in the hallway, arms crossed, expressions somewhere between worried and annoyed. "You've been avoiding me. I've been working." Sophia pushed past her into the apartment. "You're always working. That's not an excuse." Lena closed the door and leaned against it. "What do you want, Sophia?" "I want to know why you're being like this." Sophia turned to face her, her eyes searching. "You barely talk to me anymore. You don't return my calls. You looked miserable at the dress fitting." "I'm tired." "You're lying." Lena's jaw tightened. "What do you want me to say?" "The truth." Sophia's voice softened. "Lena, we used to tell each other everything. Now it's like you're a stranger." "Maybe I am." Sophia flinched. "Don't say that." "Why not? It's true." Lena pushed off the door, her frustration boiling over. "You have this whole life now, Ethan, the wedding, the future, and I'm just here, working night shifts, living in a shoebox, trying not to disappear. That's not fair, isn't it?" Lena laughed bitterly. "You get everything, Sophia. You always have, and I'm supposed to just smile and be happy for you." "I didn't ask for this." "You didn't have to. It just comes to you, effortlessly." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "You think my life is perfect? You think I don't struggle?" "I think you don't know what struggle is." The words hung in the air, sharp and cutting. Sophia stared at her, hurt written across her face. "I didn't come here to fight," Sophia said quietly. "I came because I miss my sister, but if you want to push me away, fine. I'll go." She turned toward the door. Lena almost let her leave. Almost. But something in her chest twisted, and the words came out before she could stop them. "I loved him first." Sophia froze. Slowly she turned back. "What?" Lena's hands were shaking. "Ethan, I loved him first. Before you. Before any of this." Sophia's face went pale. "Lena, I met him the day you brought him home, and for 3 years I watched you fall in love with him. I watched him fall in love with you, and I never said anything because that's what I do. I stay quiet. I stay out of the way." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because it wouldn't have mattered." Lena's voice cracked. "You wanted him, and you got him, just like everything else." Sophia looked like she'd been slapped. "You think I stole him from you? Didn't you?" "No, Lena, no, I didn't." Sophia's voice broke. "I didn't know, I swear, I didn't know." Would it have changed anything? The question hung between them. Sophia opened her mouth, then closed it. Her silence was answer enough. Lena wiped at her eyes, angry at the tears that wouldn't stop. "You should go." "Lena, please, just go." Sophia hesitated, her face crumpling. Then she turned and walked out, the door closing softly behind her. Lena sank onto the couch and buried her face in her hands. Her phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. "I'm sorry." Lena deleted it. She stayed on the couch for hours, staring at nothing, feeling hollow. Eventually, she reached for the black phone Alessandro had given her. She turned it over in her hands, her thumb hovering over the call button. She didn't press it, but she didn't put it down either. The next night at work, Lena moved through her shift on autopilot. Her eyes burned, her chest ached. She felt like she was holding herself together with tape and stubbornness. At 2 a.m., she took her break in the hospital courtyard, a small concrete square with a bench and a dying tree. She sat there, staring at the sky, trying to remember the last time she'd felt like herself. Long shift? She looked up. A doctor she vaguely recognized stood a few feet away, holding a coffee. He was younger than most of the attendings, maybe early 30s, with tired eyes and a kind smile. "Something like that," she said. "Mind if I sit?" She shrugged. He sat down, leaving a respectful distance between them. "I've seen you around," he said. "You're one of the aides, right?" "Yeah." "I'm Dr. Bennett, Owen." Lena. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Owen said, "You okay? You look like you've had a rough night. Rough week. Anything I can help with?" She almost laughed. "Unless you can rewrite the past 3 years of my life, no." Owen smiled faintly. "That bad, huh?" "You have no idea." He took a sip of his coffee. "For what it's worth, I get it. Life has a way of kicking you when you're down." "Yeah, it does." They sat there a little longer, the silence comfortable. When Owen stood to leave, he handed her his coffee. "You look like you need this more than I do." Lena took it, surprised. "Thanks. Any time." He started toward the door, then paused. "Hey, Lena. Whatever you're going through, it won't last forever. I promise." He disappeared inside before she could respond. Lena sat there, holding the warm cup, feeling something shift in her chest. Not hope, exactly, but maybe the beginning of it. When she got home that morning, the black phone was sitting on her coffee table where she'd left it. She picked it up, stared at it for a long moment, then set it back down. She wasn't ready to call, but she was starting to think she might be. 2 weeks passed before Lena saw Alessandro again. 2 weeks of night shifts and avoiding phone calls and pretending the black phone didn't exist. She kept it in her jacket pocket, a constant reminder of something she couldn't quite name. Safety, maybe, or the illusion of it. On a Tuesday night, she was walking home from the bus stop when she felt it. The prickling awareness of being watched. She'd felt it before, in the hospital corridors, on crowded streets. But this was different, more deliberate. She quickened her pace, her keys already in her hand, points out like she'd learned from some half-forgotten self-defense video. The street was empty, the shops closed, the only light coming from flickering street lamps and the occasional passing car. Footsteps behind her. Close. She didn't look back, just walked faster, her heart hammering, her breath coming quick and shallow. Her building was 3 blocks away. She could make it. She just had to... A hand grabbed her shoulder. Lena spun, keys raised, ready to swing. But the man who'd grabbed her was faster. He caught her wrist, twisted it behind her back, and slammed her against the brick wall of a closed laundromat. "Stop fighting!" His breath was hot against her ear. "This will be easier if you stop fighting." Terror flooded her system. She tried to scream, but his other hand clamped over her mouth. "We're just going to have a little talk," he said. "About your boyfriend." Boyfriend? She didn't have a boyfriend. She tried to shake her head, tried to tell him he had the wrong person, but his grip tightened. "Alessandro De Luca. You know him, right? Been spending time with him?" Her blood went cold. "Yeah, that's what I thought." He leaned closer. "Here's how this works. You're going to tell him to back off the Riverside deal. You're going to tell him Marco Vitelli doesn't appreciate him stepping on our territory. And if he doesn't listen..." He didn't get to finish. 1 second he was pressed against her, the next he was on the ground, blood pouring from his nose. Lena blinked, disoriented, her back still against the wall. Alessandro stood over the man, his expression cold and empty. 2 other men flanked him, the same ones from the bus, dressed in dark suits, their faces impassive. "Get up," Alessandro said. The man on the ground scrambled to his feet, holding his nose. "De Luca, I was just..." "I know what you were doing." Alessandro's voice was quiet, controlled, and somehow more terrifying because of it. "You put your hands on her. I wasn't going to hurt her, just scare her a little. That's still hurting her." The man opened his mouth, thought better of it, and closed it again. Alessandro took a step forward. "You go back to Marco. You tell him I don't negotiate through threats. You tell him if he wants to talk, he calls me. And you tell him if anyone touches her again, I'll burn the Riverside deal to the ground and make sure he loses a hell of a lot more than a few warehouses." The man nodded quickly. Yeah, I'll tell him." "Good. Now get out of my sight." The man didn't need to be told twice. He stumbled away, half running down the street until he disappeared around a corner. Alessandro turned to Lena. His expression shifted, less cold, more concerned. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, even though her wrist throbbed where the man had twisted it, even though her shoulder ached from being slammed into the wall. "Come here." She didn't move. Couldn't. Her legs felt like water. Alessandro closed the distance between them and reached for her wrist, his touch surprisingly gentle. He examined it, his jaw tight. "It's fine," she managed. "It's not." He looked at her, his silver eyes sharp. "Did he hurt you anywhere else?" "No." "You're sure?" "Yes." He held her gaze for a long moment, as if checking for lies. Then he let go of her wrist and stepped back. "Get in the car." "I can walk." "Lena." His voice was firm. "Get in the car." She got in the car. They drove in silence. Lena sat rigid in the passenger seat, her hands clenched in her lap, her mind racing. Alessandro had said something about a deal, about territory, about someone named Marco. The man had grabbed her because of Alessandro, because they thought she was his. What? Girlfriend? Weakness? "I don't understand what just happened," she said finally. Alessandro kept his eyes on the road. "You got caught in something you shouldn't have been near. Because of you." "Yes." "So what am I supposed to do? Just wait for the next guy to grab me off the street?" "No, you're going to stay away from dark streets and empty corners, and you're going to use the phone I gave you." "I didn't have time." "You had time." He glanced at her. "You just didn't want to call." She didn't have an answer to that. They pulled up outside her building. Alessandro turned off the engine and faced her fully. "I need to know you're safe," he said. "Why do you care?" The question hung between them. Alessandro's expression shifted. Something flickered in his eyes, too quick to catch. "Because I do." It wasn't an answer, not really, but the way he said it, the weight behind the words, made her chest tighten. "Who are you?" she asked quietly. "I told you. Alessandro De Luca." "That's a name, not an answer." He smiled faintly. "I'm someone who keeps his word. I told you I'd look out for you. That's what I'm doing." "Why me? Why not you?" Lena laughed, bitter and sharp. "Because I'm nobody. I'm a nurse's aide who lives in a fourth-floor walk-up and can't even afford to fix her broken mailbox. I'm not someone people look out for." Alessandro leaned back, studying her. "You really believe that?" "It's true." "No, it's not." He reached over and tipped her chin up, forcing her to meet his eyes. "You think you're invisible, but you're not. Not to me." The words hit her like a punch. She pulled away, her throat tight. "I should go." "Lena, thank you for the ride." She got out before he could argue, stumbling toward the building. Behind her, the car idled for a long moment before driving away. Inside her apartment, Lena locked the door and collapsed against it. Her hands were shaking. Her wrist ached, and somewhere deep in her chest, something twisted, fear and anger and a strange, unwanted warmth. She pulled out the black phone and stared at it. Then she called. Alessandro answered on the first ring. "You okay?" "No." Her voice cracked. "I'm not okay." "Tell me what you need." "I need to understand what just happened. I need to know why someone grabbed me off the street. I need—" She stopped, her breath hitching. "I need to know what I'm in the middle of." There was a pause. Then Alessandro said, "Not over the phone, tomorrow. I'll pick you up after your shift." "Alessandro." "Tomorrow, Lena. Lock your door." The line went dead. Lena sat on the floor, the phone still in her hand, and cried. The next day dragged. Every sound made her jump. Every shadow felt like a threat. By the time her shift ended, she was exhausted, physically, emotionally, in every way that mattered. Alessandro was waiting outside the hospital, leaning against the black car, his hands in his pockets. He straightened when he saw her. "Get in." She did. They drove for 20 minutes, leaving the familiar streets behind, heading toward a part of the city she didn't recognize. Warehouses and industrial lots gave way to upscale neighborhoods with manicured lawns and gates. Alessandro turned into a driveway flanked by stone pillars and pulled up to a house that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Modern glass and steel, surrounded by trees. "Where are we?" Lena asked. "My house." "Why?" "Because you wanted answers, and I don't give them in public." He got out. After a moment, she followed. Inside, the house was just as impressive. High ceilings, minimalist furniture, art on the walls that probably cost more than her entire apartment. Alessandro led her to a sitting room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a wooded yard. Sit. She sat. Alessandro poured 2 glasses of whiskey from a crystal decanter and handed her one. She took it, but didn't drink. You want to know who I am? He said, settling into the chair across from her. I'm going to tell you, but once I do, you can't unhear it. I'm listening. He leaned back, the glass balanced on his knee. I run an organization. Import, export, acquisitions, investments. Some of it's legal, most of it's not. Lena's stomach dropped. You're a criminal. I'm a businessman who operates outside the law. There's a difference. Not really. His mouth curved. Fair enough. And the man who grabbed me? Works for a rival, Marco Vitelli. We've been competing for control of a shipment route through the Riverside district. He thought threatening you would make me back off. And will it? No. The bluntness of it startled her. So what happens now? Now Marco learns that touching you was a mistake, and you stay out of it. I didn't ask to be in it. I know. Alessandro set down his glass and leaned forward. That's my fault. I pulled you into this world, and I should have been more careful. But I'm not letting you go now. You don't get to decide that, don't I? The question hung in the air. Lena wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong, but the look in his eyes stopped her. There was something there, possessive and certain and strangely honest. Why me? She asked again. You could have anyone. Why pick the broke nurse's aide? Because everyone else lies. He held her gaze. You don't. You're angry and hurt, and you don't hide it. You don't pretend to be something you're not. So what? I'm a project to you? Some broken thing you want to fix? No. His voice was firm. You're not broken. You're just tired of being invisible. The words struck deep. Lena looked away, her throat tight. I should go. You're not going anywhere tonight. Excuse me? Alessandro stood and crossed to the window. Marco's people are watching your building. If you go back, they'll try again. So you stay here, where I can keep you safe. You can't just kidnap me. I'm not kidnapping you. I'm protecting you. That's the same thing. No, it's not. He turned to face her. You can leave if you want. I won't stop you. But if you do, I can't guarantee your safety, and I'm not willing to take that risk. Lena stared at him, her pulse racing. Every instinct told her to run. But another part of her, the part that was tired and angry and so damn tired of being invisible, wanted to stay. One night, she said finally. One night, Alessandro showed her to a guest room that was bigger than her entire apartment. The bed was massive, covered in white linens. The bathroom had a rainfall shower and heated floors. It felt like a different universe. There's clothes in the closet, Alessandro said from the doorway. Should fit. Help yourself to anything you need. Thank you. He nodded and turned to leave, then paused. Lena? Yeah? You're safe here, I promise. He left before she could respond. Lena stood in the middle of the room, her arms wrapped around herself, and tried to process everything. Alessandro was a criminal. She was staying in his house. Marco Vitelli's people were watching her apartment. She should be terrified, but instead she felt something else, something warm and dangerous and impossible to name. She took a shower, long and hot, letting the water wash away the grime and fear. Then she changed into the clothes Alessandro had mentioned, soft cotton pajamas that fit perfectly, like he'd known her size. That thought should have creeped her out. Instead, it made her feel seen. She climbed into bed, expecting to lie awake all night. But exhaustion pulled her under almost immediately, and for the first time in weeks, she slept without dreams. She woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the smell of coffee. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then it all came rushing back. She found Alessandro in the kitchen, dressed in slacks and a white button-down, sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked up when she entered. Coffee? Please. He poured her a cup and slid it across the counter. She took it, inhaling the rich aroma. How'd you sleep? Better than I expected. Good. They stood there in comfortable silence, drinking coffee, the morning light warm between them. I need to ask you something, Lena said. Go ahead. That first night on the bus, you said you were there by chance, but you weren't, were you? Alessandro set down his cup. No. Why were you there? He hesitated, as if weighing his words. Then he said, I was following someone, a man named Richard Cross. He's connected to Marco Vitelli's operation. I'd been tracking his movements, trying to find leverage. And he got on that bus. So I did too. Alessandro's gaze met hers. You getting on was an accident, but when you fell, when I saw you... He stopped. I couldn't look away. Lena's heart kicked. Why? Because you looked like you were carrying the weight of the world, and I wanted to know why. She didn't know what to say to that, so she just stood there holding her coffee, feeling the space between them shrink. Richard Cross, she said finally. Is he connected to Ethan? Alessandro's expression shifted, something dark crossing his face. You know Ethan Cross? Her stomach dropped. He's marrying my sister. Alessandro went very still. Say that again. Ethan Cross, he's engaged to my sister Sophia. And you didn't think to mention this? I didn't know it mattered. Alessandro set down his cup with more force than necessary. It matters. Richard Cross is Ethan's father. He runs one of the largest smuggling operations on the East Coast. If Ethan's marrying into your family, he's using her. The realization hit Lena like ice water. He's using Sophia to get close to something. Or someone. Alessandro's jaw tightened. Does your family have money? Connections? Anything Ethan might want? No. We're nobody. My mom's a receptionist. My dad left when we were kids. We don't have anything. Alessandro frowned, thinking. Then it's not about your family. It's about access, proximity. He's positioning himself. For what? I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. Lena set down her cup, her hand shaking. Sophia, I have to warn her. No. What do you mean, no? If you warn her, Ethan will know you know, and that puts you in danger. Alessandro crossed to her, his voice firm. You stay out of this. Let me handle it. She's my sister, and she'll be fine as long as you don't do anything stupid. Lena glared at him. I'm not just going to sit here while she walks into a trap. Yes, you are. Alessandro's expression softened slightly. I know you want to protect her, but right now the best thing you can do is trust me. I don't trust you. Then learn. They stared at each other, the tension thick. Finally, Lena looked away. How long do I have to stay here? Until I neutralize Marco's interest in you. A few days, maybe a week. I have to work. Call in sick. I can't afford to. I'll cover it. I don't want your money. Too bad. Lena wanted to argue, but the exhaustion was back, pulling at her like a tide. She sank onto a stool at the counter and dropped her head into her hands. Alessandro moved around the counter and stood beside her. After a moment, he rested a hand on her shoulder, warm and solid and strangely comforting. I know this is a lot, he said quietly, but I'm not letting anything happen to you, I swear it. She looked up at him, searching his face. Why do you care so much? His hand tightened slightly. Because the moment you fell on that bus, something shifted, and I don't know what it is yet, but I'm not walking away from it. Lena's breath caught. The honesty in his voice, the raw certainty, it undid something in her. I don't know if I can do this, she whispered. You can. You're stronger than you think. I don't feel strong. You don't have to. He crouched down, bringing himself to eye level. You just have to trust me. Can you do that? She wanted to say no, wanted to run, to go back to her tiny apartment and her invisible life. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw something she'd never seen before. She saw someone who thought she mattered. Okay, she said. Alessandro smiled, small and real, and stood. Good. Now eat something. You look like you haven't had a decent meal in weeks. He wasn't wrong. Over the next few days, Lena settled into a strange new routine. She stayed in Alessandro's house, wandering the rooms, reading books from his extensive library, eating food his housekeeper prepared. Alessandro came and went, meetings, phone calls, business she didn't ask about. But every evening he came back, and they'd sit in the living room drinking wine or whiskey, talking about nothing and everything. "Tell me about Sophia," Alessandro said one night. Lena curled into the corner of the couch, her glass balanced on her knee. "What do you want to know?" "What's she like?" "Perfect." The word came out bitter. "Beautiful, charming, effortless. Everyone loves her." But nothing. That's just who she is." Alessandro studied her. "You resent her." "I don't—" Lena stopped. "Maybe. I don't know. It's hard not to. Everything I've had to fight for, she just gets, and she doesn't even realize it. And Ethan?" Lena's chest tightened. "I loved him. For 3 years, I loved him. And he never saw me." "His loss." The words were simple, but the conviction behind them made her throat ache. "You don't know me," she said. "I know enough." Alessandro leaned forward. "I know you're loyal. I know you're brave, stupidly brave sometimes. I know you feel everything too deeply, and you're terrified of being forgotten." Lena looked away, her eyes burning. "Stop." "Why?" "Because you're making me want things I can't have." "Like what?" "Like—" She broke off, her voice catching. "Like being seen, like mattering." Alessandro set down his glass and crossed to the couch. He sat beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat of him. "You matter," he said quietly. "To me." Lena looked at him, her heart hammering. "You don't mean that." "I don't say things I don't mean." The space between them felt charged, electric. Lena knew she should move, should put distance between them, but she couldn't, didn't want to. "Alessandro." He reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch gentle. "Tell me to stop." She should. She should tell him to stop, to back off, to leave her alone, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she leaned in. Their lips met, soft at first, tentative. Then Alessandro's hand slid into her hair, pulling her closer, and the kiss deepened. Lena's glass slipped from her hand, forgotten, as she melted into him. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Alessandro rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that since the moment I saw you," he murmured. Lena's hands fisted in his shirt. "This is a bad idea." "Probably. I don't know how to do this." "Neither do I." He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. "But I'm willing to figure it out, if you are." She should say no, should protect herself. But looking at him, at the raw honesty in his face, she couldn't. "Okay," she whispered. Alessandro smiled and kissed her again. That night changed everything. Lena woke the next morning tangled in Alessandro's sheets, his arm heavy across her waist, and for the first time in years she didn't feel invisible. She felt seen, wanted, real. Alessandro stirred beside her, his eyes still closed, and pulled her closer. "Don't move." "I have to pee." "No, you don't." She laughed, quiet and unexpected, and the sound made him smile. He opened his eyes, those silver irises catching the morning light, and looked at her like she was the only thing that existed. "Hi," he murmured. "Hi." They stayed like that for a while, wrapped up in each other, the world outside forgotten. But reality had a way of creeping back in, and when Alessandro's phone buzzed on the nightstand, the moment shattered. He grabbed it, his expression hardening as he read the screen. "I have to take this." "Okay." He kissed her forehead and slipped out of bed, pulling on his pants as he walked into the hallway. Lena heard his voice, low and sharp, drifting through the open door. "I don't care what Marco wants. The answer's no." "Because he made this personal." "I said no." The call ended. Alessandro came back into the room, his jaw tight. "Everything okay?" Lena asked. "It will be." He sat on the edge of the bed, his back to her. "Marco's pushing harder. He wants to meet." "Are you going to?" "Eventually, but not until I have leverage." Lena sat up, pulling the sheet around herself. And what's the leverage? Alessandro glanced over his shoulder. Richard Cross, Ethan's father. Her stomach twisted. What about him? I've been digging into his operation. If I can tie him to Marco's smuggling routes, I can force Marco to back off. He paused. But it also means exposing Ethan. Lena's breath caught. Sophia, if Ethan goes down, she'll be collateral damage. I know. You can't do that to her. I can, and I will. If it means keeping you safe. The bluntness of it hit her like a slap. Lena scrambled out of bed, clutching the sheet. No, you can't just destroy her life because of me. Why not? Alessandro stood, his voice calm but firm. She took the man you loved. She spent her whole life taking from you. Why do you still protect her? Because she's my sister. That's not a good enough reason. It is to me, Lena's voice cracked. I'm angry at her, I resent her, but I don't want to see her hurt. Alessandro crossed to her, his hands gripping her shoulders. Then you're going to have to make a choice, her or you, because I can't protect both. That's not fair. No, it's not, but it's the truth. Lena stared at him, her chest tight. I don't want to choose. You already did. The moment you got in my car, the words hung between them, heavy and undeniable. Lena pulled away, wrapping her arms around herself. I need air. She grabbed Alessandro's shirt from the floor and pulled it on, then walked out onto the balcony. The morning was cold, the sky overcast. She stood at the railing, staring at the trees, trying to breathe through the panic clawing at her ribs. Behind her, she heard Alessandro approach. He didn't touch her, just stood there, waiting. I don't know how to do this, she said finally. Do what? Choose myself. I've spent my whole life making myself smaller so other people could shine. And now you're asking me to… She stopped, her throat tight. To be selfish. It's not selfish to want to survive. It feels like it. Alessandro moved closer, his hand resting on the small of her back. Lena, look at me. She turned. I'm not asking you to hurt Sophia. I'm asking you to let me protect you. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. His gaze was steady. If exposing Ethan means Sophia gets hurt, that's not your fault. That's his. He's the one who lied. He's the one who got involved with dangerous people. You're just trying to stay alive. Lena wanted to argue, but the truth was she was tired. Tired of carrying the weight of everyone else's happiness. Tired of being invisible. Okay, she whispered. Alessandro pulled her into his arms, and she let herself sink into him. Over the next few days, the tension in the house thickened. Alessandro spent hours on the phone, in meetings, coordinating something Lena wasn't privy to. She tried to stay out of his way, tried to pretend everything was normal. But the fear lingered, a constant hum beneath her skin. She wandered through Alessandro's house like a ghost, exploring rooms she hadn't noticed before. A library lined floor to ceiling with books in multiple languages. A gym with equipment that looked barely used. An office with mahogany furniture and windows overlooking the city. Everything screamed wealth and power, and Lena felt like an imposter in the middle of it all. On the third day, she found herself in the library, pulling books off shelves at random. She settled into a leather armchair with a worn copy of something in Italian. She couldn't read it, but the pages smelled like old paper and history. That one's about a man who loses everything and has to rebuild, Alessandro said from the doorway. Lena jumped, nearly dropping the book. You scared me. Sorry. He walked in, loosening his tie. Seemed fitting, though, the book. Why? Because that's what you're doing. Losing everything, rebuilding. Lena set the book down. Is that what this is? Isn't it? He sat on the arm of her chair. You've lost your sister, your family, your old life. You're building something new. With you. If you want. She looked up at him. Do you ever regret it? Pulling me into this? Alessandro was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. No, but I regret that it had to be this way. That you had to get hurt to get here. Maybe I needed to get hurt. The words surprised her, but once she said them, she knew they were true. Maybe I needed to break before I could become someone new. Alessandro reached down and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. You were never broken, Lena, just buried. The tenderness in his voice made her chest ache. She stood and wrapped her arms around his waist, pressing her face against his chest. He held her there, solid and warm, and for a moment everything else fell away. I'm scared, she admitted. Of what? Of what comes next, of who I'm becoming, of losing myself in all of this. You won't. His hand smoothed down her back. I won't let you. On the fourth night, Alessandro came home late, his tie loosened, his expression grim. Lena was curled up on the couch, reading, when he walked in. Bad day? She asked. Something like that. He poured himself a drink and downed it in one swallow. Want to talk about it? Not particularly. She set down her book. Alessandro. He turned to face her, his eyes dark. I found something. On Richard Cross. Lena's heart kicked. What? He's been moving shipments through a front company, medical supplies, pharmaceuticals. On paper, it looks legitimate, but the volume doesn't match the sales records. Someone's skimming. Skimming what? Narcotics, high-grade stuff. Enough to put him away for a long time. Alessandro set down his glass. And the shipments? They're going through ports that Marco controls. They've been working together. So they're partners? More like Richard Cross is paying Marco for protection and access. It's a symbiotic relationship. Richard gets his drugs moved, Marco gets paid and expands his territory. Lena's mind raced. And Ethan? Ethan's name is on the paperwork. He's a co-signer for the company. Whether he knows what his father's doing or not doesn't matter. He's implicated. Alessandro crossed to her, his voice dropping. I have everything I need. Bank transfers, shipping manifests, communications. It's airtight. So what are you going to do? I'm going to give it to the feds. Let them tear Richard Cross apart. And in the process, Marco loses his biggest partner. It'll cripple his operation. And Sophia? Alessandro's jaw tightened. Sophia will have to deal with it. She doesn't deserve this. Maybe not, but neither do you. That's not the same. It is to me. Alessandro cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. You keep trying to save her, but she wouldn't do the same for you. You know that, right? The truth of it stung. Lena wanted to argue, but she couldn't. Sophia had never protected her, had never even noticed she needed protecting. I hate this, Lena whispered. I know. He kissed her forehead, but it'll be over soon. I promise. The next morning, Lena woke to find Alessandro already gone. A note on the nightstand read, Meeting with my contact at the FBI. Back by noon. Stay inside. She showered and dressed, her mind churning. This was it. The moment everything would change. Richard Cross would be arrested. Ethan would be exposed. Sophia's perfect life would crumble, and Lena would be the reason why. She tried to distract herself, made coffee, attempted to read, scrolled mindlessly through her phone, but nothing worked. The guilt sat heavy in her chest, a weight she couldn't shake. Around 11, her phone rang. Sophia. Lena stared at the screen, her thumb hovering over the decline button. Then, against her better judgment, she answered. Hello? Lena. Sophia's voice was strained. Where are you? Why? Because I need to see you. It's important. Sophia, I don't think, please, just meet me. The park near Mom's house. 1 hour. I can't. Lena, please, it's about Ethan. Something's wrong, and I don't know who else to talk to. The desperation in her sister's voice twisted something inside Lena. Okay, 1 hour. She hung up and immediately texted Alessandro. Sophia wants to meet. I'm going. His response came within seconds. No, stay home. I have to do this. Lena, it's not safe. I'll be in a public park. I'll be fine. There was a long pause. Then, I'm sending someone to watch you. Don't do anything stupid. Lena pocketed her phone and grabbed her jacket. The park was quiet, the afternoon sun breaking through clouds. Lena found Sophia sitting on a bench near the pond, her arms wrapped around herself, staring at nothing. Hey, Lena said, sitting down beside her. Sophia looked up and Lena's breath caught. Her sister's eyes were red and swollen, her face pale. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Thanks for coming," Sophia said quietly. "What's going on?" Sophia's hands twisted in her lap. "Ethan's been acting weird, secretive. He gets phone calls and leaves the room. He's been meeting with people he won't tell me about. And yesterday," her voice broke. "Yesterday, I overheard him talking to his father about shipments and money and covering tracks. Lena, I think he's involved in something illegal." Lena's stomach dropped. "What did you hear exactly?" "His father was yelling about an audit, about making sure the records were clean, and Ethan kept saying everything was fine, that no one would find anything, but he sounded scared." Sophia looked at her, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know what to do. I love him, but if he's lying to me—" "Sophia." Lena took her sister's hand. "What if I told you that you're right, that Ethan and his father are involved in something dangerous?" Sophia went still. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I know things. About Richard Cross. About what they've been doing." "How?" "It doesn't matter how. What matters is that you need to get away from Ethan, now, before everything falls apart." Sophia pulled her hand back. "You're scaring me." "Good. You should be scared." Lena leaned forward. "Sophia, listen to me. Ethan's father is a criminal, and Ethan is either complicit or willfully blind. Either way, when the truth comes out, and it will come out, you don't want to be standing next to him." "When it comes out—" Sophia's eyes widened. "Lena, what did you do?" "I didn't do anything, but someone else did. And soon, the FBI is going to knock on Ethan's door." Sophia stood abruptly, backing away. You knew, and you didn't tell me." "I'm telling you now." "When is it happening?" Lena hesitated. "I don't know exactly. Soon." "How soon?" Sophia said, "How soon, Lena?" "Maybe today, maybe tomorrow. I don't know." Sophia's face crumpled. "I can't believe you. After everything, you're really going to let this happen?" "I'm not letting anything happen. Ethan did this to himself. But you could have warned me. You could have given me time to—" She stopped, her breath hitching. "You wanted this. You wanted him to suffer because he chose me. That's not true. Isn't it?" Sophia's voice was sharp now, cutting. "You've always been jealous of me, always wanted what I had, and now you finally get to watch me lose it all." The accusation hit like a physical blow. Lena stood, her own anger rising. "You're right. I was jealous. I spent 3 years loving a man who never even saw me because he was too busy looking at you. But this isn't about revenge, Sophia. This is about survival. Ethan's family is dangerous, and I got pulled into it. I'm trying to get out. And I'm trying to save you in the process. By destroying my life? Your life was already destroyed. You just didn't know it yet." They stared at each other, the space between them crackling with years of unspoken resentment and pain. Finally, Sophia turned away. "I need to go." "Sophia, don't. Just don't." She walked away, her shoulders shaking. Lena watched her go, feeling like she'd just severed something vital. Her phone buzzed. "Alessandro." "Where are you?" "Still at the park." "She's gone." "Stay there. I'm coming to get you." Lena sat back down on the bench, her body heavy with exhaustion. She'd done what she had to do. She'd warned Sophia. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like loss. 15 minutes later, Alessandro's car pulled up. He got out, his expression tight with concern. "You okay?" "No." He sat beside her, his arm around her shoulders. "What happened?" "I told her. About Ethan. About what's coming." Lena's voice was hollow. "She thinks I did it for revenge." "Did you?" "No. But maybe part of me wanted to." She looked at him. "Does that make me a bad person?" "No. It makes you human." Alessandro pulled her closer. "You tried to save her, Lena. Whether she sees it or not, that's what you did. It doesn't feel like saving her. It never does." They sat there for a while, the park emptying around them as the sun dipped lower. Finally, Alessandro stood and held out his hand. Come on, let's go home. Lena took his hand and let him lead her back to the car. That night, Alessandro made the call. Lena sat beside him in his office, her hands clenched in her lap, as he spoke to someone on the other end. Short, clipped sentences that sealed Richard Cross's fate. "It's done," he said when he hung up. "The feds will move tomorrow morning. Richard Cross will be arrested, and they'll bring Ethan in for questioning." Lena nodded, feeling numb. Alessandro knelt in front of her, taking her hands. "I need you to understand something. This isn't your fault. Ethan made his choices. His father made his choices. You just chose not to go down with them." "I know, but it still hurts." "I know it does." He kissed her knuckles. "But it'll get easier, I promise." That night, Lena couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind replaying every conversation, every choice, every moment that had led her here. Alessandro slept beside her, his breathing deep and even, but Lena felt wide awake, her thoughts racing. Around 3 a.m. she slipped out of bed and went downstairs. The house was dark and quiet. She made tea and stood at the window, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. "Can't sleep?" She turned to find Alessandro standing in the doorway, shirtless, his hair mussed. "Sorry, I didn't mean to wake you." "You didn't." He crossed to her, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "What's going on in that head of yours?" "Everything." She leaned back against him. "I keep thinking about Sophia, about what happens after tomorrow, if she'll hate me forever, if I'll ever get her back. Maybe you will, maybe you won't, but either way, you'll survive." "How do you know?" "Because you're stronger than you think, and because you have me." Lena turned in his arms, looking up at him. "What if I'm not strong enough? Then I'll be strong enough for both of us." He kissed her forehead. "That's what we do. We hold each other up." Tears burned her eyes. "I don't deserve you." "Yes, you do. You deserve everything." He cupped her face, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you know it." The next morning arrived like a storm. Lena woke to her phone buzzing relentlessly. Messages from her mother, from Sophia, from numbers she didn't recognize. The news had broken. Richard Cross arrested on charges of drug trafficking and conspiracy. Ethan Cross brought in for questioning. She turned off her phone and buried her face in the pillow. Alessandro was already downstairs, on the phone, coordinating something. When Lena finally dragged herself out of bed and went to find him, he was standing in his office, his expression grim. "How bad is it?" she asked. "Richard Cross is in custody. Ethan's being questioned, but they haven't charged him yet. Depends on what he tells them." Alessandro turned to face her. "Marco's people have gone to ground. The operation's falling apart." "And Sophia?" "I don't know. She's not answering calls." Lena's chest tightened. "I need to see her." "Lena? I know it's a bad idea, but I have to make sure she's okay." Alessandro studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "I'll come with you." They drove to Sophia's apartment in tense silence. When they arrived, Lana could see reporters camped outside the building, cameras ready. Alessandro parked a block away. "Stay here," he said. "I'll handle them." "No, I need to do this myself." Before he could argue, she got out of the car and walked toward the building. The reporters swarmed immediately, shouting questions, shoving microphones in her face. "Lena Carter, what's your relationship to Ethan Cross? Did you know about the illegal operation? Is it true your sister is calling off the wedding?" Lena pushed through them, her head down, her heart pounding. She made it to the building's entrance and buzzed Sophia's apartment. No answer. She buzzed again. Finally, a crackling voice came through the speaker. "Go away! Sophia, it's me. Please. I just want to make sure you're okay." There was a long pause. Then the door buzzed open. Lena took the stairs 2 at a time, her breath coming fast. When she reached Sophia's door, it was already open. Sophia stood in the doorway, her eyes red and hollow. "What do you want?" she asked flatly. "To see if you're okay." Sophia laughed, bitter and sharp. "Do I look okay?" "No." "Then you have your answer." She turned to walk back inside, but Lena caught her arm. "Sophia, wait, please. Just let me explain." "Explain what?" Sophia spun around, her face twisted with anger and pain. That you knew my fiance's father was a criminal and you said nothing? That you let me plan a wedding while you were tearing my life apart? I was trying to protect you. By destroying everything I had? By keeping you from getting caught in the crossfire. Lena's voice rose. Ethan's family is dangerous, Sophia. If I'd told you earlier, you would have defended him. You would have stayed. And when everything came crashing down, you'd be buried in it too. At least I would have had a choice. Would you? Or would you have chosen him over your own safety because that's what you always do? You choose the shiny thing, the easy thing, without ever looking at the cost. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. You think this is easy? Watching my life fall apart on live television? Having reporters outside my door? Finding out the man I love is a liar? No, I don't think it's easy, but I think it's better than the alternative. Which is what? Being complicit. Or worse, being dead. The words hung between them, heavy and final. Sophia stared at her, tears streaming down her face. I can't do this right now, she whispered. I can't. Okay. Lena took a step back. But I'm not sorry for what I did. I'm sorry you're hurting, but I'm not sorry for surviving. She turned and walked away, her heart breaking with every step. When she got back to the car, Alessandro took one look at her face and pulled her into his arms. She broke down completely, sobbing against his chest, feeling like she'd just lost the last piece of her old life. It's done, she choked out between sobs. It's really done. I know, Alessandro murmured, holding her tight. I know. They drove home in silence, and for the first time since this all started, Lena let herself grieve, not for what she'd lost, but for what could never be again. 3 weeks passed before Lena could breathe without feeling like her chest was caving in. 3 weeks of avoiding the news, ignoring her mother's calls, and pretending the world outside Alessandro's house didn't exist. She moved through the days like someone relearning how to walk, uncertain, unsteady, but determined to keep going. Alessandro gave her space when she needed it and stayed close when she didn't. He didn't push her to talk or force her to feel better. He just existed beside her, solid and patient, like he had all the time in the world. On a gray Thursday morning, Lena woke to find him sitting on the edge of the bed, already dressed, a cup of coffee in his hand. Morning, he said. What time is it? 9. You slept through the alarm. She sat up, rubbing her eyes. Sorry. Don't be. He handed her the coffee. I have a meeting this afternoon. Shouldn't take more than a few hours. You gonna be okay here? Yeah, I'll be fine. He studied her face, his expression skeptical. You sure? Alessandro, I'm not going to fall apart the second you leave. I know, but humor me anyway. She smiled faintly. I'll be fine, I promise. He kissed her forehead and left. Lena sat there for a while, sipping her coffee, listening to the house settle around her. The silence used to comfort her. Now it just made her think too much. She got dressed and went downstairs. The kitchen was spotless, the housekeeper having already come and gone. Lena poured herself another cup of coffee and stood at the window, staring out at the manicured lawn. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She'd turned it back on 2 days ago, bracing herself for the onslaught, but the messages had slowed to a trickle. Her mother had stopped calling. Sophia hadn't contacted her at all. This message was from a number she didn't recognize. Ms. Carter, this is Detective Sarah Mills with the FBI. I'd like to speak with you regarding the Richard Cross case. Please call me at your earliest convenience. Lena's stomach dropped. She set down her coffee and dialed the number. Detective Mills, this is Lena Carter. You wanted to talk to me? Yes, thank you for calling back so quickly. I have a few questions about your relationship with Ethan Cross and his family. Would you be available to come to the field office today? I don't have a relationship with them. My sister was engaged to Ethan, but they're not together anymore. I understand, but we believe you may have information relevant to the case. It shouldn't take long, maybe an hour. Lena's hands were shaking. Do I need a lawyer? You're not under investigation, Ms. Carter. We just want to clarify a few things. Okay. When? Would 2 o'clock work? Yeah, I'll be there. She hung up and immediately called Alessandro. He answered on the second ring. What's wrong? The FBI wants to talk to me. About Richard Cross. There was a pause. When? Today, 2 o'clock. I'll be there. You don't have to. I'll be there, Lena. Don't go alone. At 1:30, Alessandro picked her up. He'd changed into a different suit, darker, more severe. He looked like he was preparing for battle. You didn't have to cancel your meeting, Lena said as they drove. Yes, I did. Alessandro. Lena, I'm not letting you walk into an FBI office alone. End of discussion. She didn't argue. The truth was she was grateful, terrified, but grateful. The FBI field office was a gray building that looked like every government structure she'd ever seen, functional, intimidating, designed to make you feel small. Alessandro held her hand as they walked through security, his grip firm and reassuring. Detective Mills met them in a sterile conference room with a table, 4 chairs, and nothing else. She was younger than Lena expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. Miss Carter, thank you for coming. Mills glanced at Alessandro. And you are? Alessandro De Luca. I'm with her. Mills's expression shifted slightly. Recognition, maybe, or wariness. Mr. De Luca, I've heard your name. I'm sure you have. Mills sat down and gestured for them to do the same. She opened a folder and pulled out several photographs. Surveillance shots of Ethan, Richard Cross, and several men Lena didn't recognize. Ms. Carter, I want to be clear. You're not in any trouble, but we believe you may have witnessed or overheard things that could help our case. Mills tapped one of the photos. Did you ever see Ethan Cross with any of these men? Lena studied the photos. One of them showed Ethan standing outside a warehouse, talking to someone in an expensive suit. Another showed him getting into a black SUV with tinted windows. No, I didn't really see Ethan much. He was with my sister, not me. But you attended family gatherings, dinners, events where he was present? A few, but he and I didn't talk much. Mills pulled out another photo, this one of Sophia and Ethan at what looked like a charity gala. Your sister was engaged to Ethan Cross for nearly 2 years. In that time, did she ever mention his business, his father's company? No, she talked about the wedding mostly. She never mentioned trips, meetings, anything unusual? Lena hesitated. She said he traveled a lot for work, but she didn't say where or why. Mills made a note. Did you ever overhear conversations between Ethan and his father? Once, at a family dinner, they were arguing about something, money, I think. Ethan said his father was being reckless. That's all I heard. When was this? Maybe 6 months ago? Mills nodded, writing something down. Then she looked up, her gaze sharp. Miss Carter, we know you've been staying with Mr. De Luca. We also know that Mr. De Luca has had business dealings with Marco Vitelli. Can you tell me about that? Alessandro's hand tightened on Lena's. My relationship with Marco Vitelli is irrelevant to your case. Is it? Because Marco Vitelli was Richard Cross's primary distribution partner, and you, Mr. De Luca, have been very interested in dismantling that partnership. I've been interested in keeping my business separate from his. That's not a crime. No, but providing information to federal investigators in exchange for immunity might be. Alessandro leaned back, his expression cold. Are you accusing me of something, Detective? I'm saying that the evidence against Richard Cross was very conveniently compiled, and it came to us through an anonymous source who had access to information most people wouldn't. Maybe Richard Cross got sloppy. Maybe. Or maybe someone wanted him out of the way. Mills looked at Lena. Ms. Carter, did Mr. De Luca ever discuss Richard Cross's business with you? Lena's pulse was racing. She could feel Alessandro's tension beside her, coiled and ready. He told me Richard Cross was dangerous, that I should stay away from Ethan and his family, that's all. Did he tell you why? Because they were criminals. And how did he know that? Lena met Mills's gaze steadily. I didn't ask. Mills studied her for a long moment. Then she closed the folder and stood. Thank you for your time, Miss Carter. We'll be in touch if we have more questions. Alessandro stood as well, his hand on Lena's back. Are we done here? For now. They walked out of the building in silence. It wasn't until they were in the car driving away that Lena finally spoke. They think you set up Richard Cross. They can think whatever they want. They have no proof. Did you? Alessandro glanced at her. Does it matter? Yeah, it does. He was quiet for a moment, his hands tight on the steering wheel. Richard Cross was moving drugs through ports that Marco controlled. I had evidence of that. I gave it to the FBI because it benefited me to have both of them out of the picture. Whether that's setting him up or just using what was already there is a matter of perspective. So you did. I protected you. That's what I did. Lena stared out the window, her mind churning. She should be angry, should feel manipulated, used, but all she felt was tired. What happens now? She asked. Now Richard Cross goes to trial. Ethan probably cuts a deal. Marco stays gone, and we move on. Just like that? Just like that. Lena wanted to believe it could be that simple. But she'd learned that nothing ever was. That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the interview in her mind. Alessandro slept beside her, his breathing deep and even, but Lena felt like her thoughts were spinning out of control. Around 2 a.m., she gave up and went downstairs. She made tea and sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around the warm mug. You're thinking too much. She looked up to find Alessandro standing in the doorway, shirtless, his hair mussed from sleep. I can't help it. He crossed to her and sat down. Talk to me. I don't know what to say. I feel like I'm drowning and I don't know how to stop. Then let me pull you up. How? He reached across the table and took her hand, by reminding you that you're not alone, that you don't have to carry all of this by yourself. Tears burned her eyes. I'm scared, Alessandro. I'm scared that I made the wrong choice, that I destroyed Sophia's life for nothing, that I'm going to wake up one day and realize I'm just as lost as I was before. You're not lost. You're just finding your way. He squeezed her hand. And yeah, maybe you made some hard choices. Maybe Sophia's hurting, but you're alive. You're safe. And you're building something new. That's not nothing. It doesn't feel like enough. It will. Eventually. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that the pain would fade, that the guilt would ease, that someday she'd look back on all of this and feel something other than regret. What if Sophia never forgives me? She whispered. Then she doesn't, and you learn to live with it. How? The same way you've learned to live with everything else, one day at a time. Lena closed her eyes, letting his words sink in. Then she stood and walked around the table, climbing into his lap. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her tight. I love you, she murmured against his neck. I love you too. They sat there until the tea went cold and the sky started to lighten, and for the first time in weeks, Lena felt like maybe, just maybe, she could survive this. The next morning, Lena made a decision. She couldn't keep hiding in Alessandro's house, avoiding the world, pretending her old life didn't exist. She needed to do something, be something. I want to go back to school, she told Alessandro over breakfast. He looked up from his coffee. Yeah? Yeah, nursing school. Finish what I started before all of this happened. You sure? No, but I need to try. Alessandro smiled, genuine and proud. Then do it. Just like that? Just like that. You want something, you go after it. That's how this works. Lena felt something loosen in her chest. Okay, I'll look into programs today. Good. He stood and kissed the top of her head. I'm proud of you. The words settled over her like a blanket. She'd spent her whole life trying to earn pride from people who barely noticed her. And here was Alessandro, giving it freely, like she'd already earned it just by existing. Over the next few weeks, Lena threw herself into researching nursing programs. She filled out applications, requested transcripts, wrote essays about why she wanted to be a nurse. The work was exhausting and exhilarating in equal measure. Alessandro supported her through all of it, reading her essays, helping her prepare for interviews, reminding her to eat when she got too focused. He didn't hover or try to take over. He just stayed close, a steady presence she could lean on when things got hard. 2 months after the FBI interview, Lena got an acceptance letter from a nursing program across the city. She stared at the email for a full minute, hardly believing it was real. "Alessandro!" she shouted, running into his office. "I got in." He looked up from his computer, his face breaking into a grin. "Yeah? Yeah." She shoved the laptop at him. "Look." He read the email, then stood and pulled her into his arms, spinning her around. "I knew you would." "I didn't." "Well, I did. Because you're brilliant and capable and way too stubborn to fail." She laughed, feeling lighter than she had in months. "When do I start?" "Next semester, January." "That's 3 months away?" "Good. Gives you time to prepare." He set her down, his hands on her waist. "We should celebrate." "How?" "Dinner, somewhere fancy, just the two of us." "I don't have anything fancy to wear." "Then we'll get you something." "Alessandro, you don't have to." "I want to. Let me do this." She looked at him, this impossible man who'd turned her life upside down and somehow made her feel whole, and nodded. "Okay." That weekend, Alessandro took her shopping. Not to a mall or a department store, but to a boutique in the upscale part of the city where the sales associates looked like models and the price tags made Lena's eyes water. "Alessandro, this is too much," she hissed as a woman brought out a rack of dresses. "It's a celebration. Nothing's too much. I don't need $1,000 dress." "Maybe not, but you deserve one." She tried on 6 dresses before finding one she liked, a deep emerald green that hugged her curves and made her feel like someone she didn't quite recognize, someone confident, someone seen. Alessandro's eyes darkened when she stepped out of the dressing room. "That's the one." "You sure?" "Positive." They went to dinner that night at a restaurant overlooking the water, the kind of place with cloth napkins and a wine list as thick as a novel. Lena felt out of place at first, hyper-aware of the other diners, the elegant surroundings, the prices on the menu. But Alessandro had a way of making her feel like she belonged. He talked to her like they were sitting in his kitchen instead of a 5-star restaurant. He made her laugh. He listened when she talked about her fears and her hopes for nursing school. "I'm scared I'll fail," she admitted over dessert. "You won't." "How do you know?" "Because you don't know how to quit. It's one of the things I love about you." She set down her fork. "What are the other things?" He leaned back, considering. "Your stubbornness, your loyalty, the way you fight for people even when they don't deserve it, the way you look at me like I'm not a monster." "You're not a monster. I've done monstrous things." "Maybe, but that's not all you are." Alessandro reached across the table and took her hand. "You see the best in people, Lena, even when they don't see it in themselves. That's rare." "Is that why you love me?" "It's one of the reasons, but mostly, I love you because you're you, messy and complicated and real." Tears pricked her eyes. "I love you too, even though you're bossy and overbearing and way too intense." He grinned. "I know." They finished dinner and walked along the waterfront, Alessandro's arm around her shoulders, the city lights reflecting on the water. Lena felt something settle inside her, not peace exactly, but something close to it. Acceptance, maybe, or the beginning of it. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For seeing me, for not letting me disappear." Alessandro stopped walking and turned to face her. "You never could have disappeared. Not to me." He kissed her, and Lena kissed him back, feeling like maybe, just maybe, she was exactly where she was supposed to be. 3 weeks later, on a cold November morning, Lena's phone rang. Her mother. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Hello?" "Lena." Her mother's voice was tight, controlled. "We need to talk." "About what?" "About Sophia. She's not doing well." Lena's chest tightened. "What do you mean?" "She's barely eating. She doesn't leave her apartment. She won't talk to anyone." Her mother's voice cracked. "She needs you, Lena." "She told me to leave her alone." "I know, but you're her sister. She needs you, even if she won't admit it." Lena closed her eyes. "Mom, I don't know if I can help her." "You have to try. Please." The desperation in her mother's voice broke something inside Lena. "Okay, I'll try." She hung up and sat there for a long moment, staring at nothing. Then she found Alessandro in his office. "I need to see Sophia," she said. He looked up. "You sure?" "No, but I have to." "Want me to come with you?" "No, this is something I need to do alone." He stood and crossed to her, pulling her into a hug. "Call me if you need me." "I will." Sophia's apartment looked the same from the outside, but when Lena knocked and Sophia answered, she barely recognized her sister. Sophia had lost weight, her clothes hanging loose, her hair lank and unwashed. The light in her eyes, the spark that had always made her seem larger than life, was gone. "Lena." Sophia's voice was flat. "What are you doing here?" "Mom called. She's worried about you." "Of course she did." Sophia turned and walked back into the apartment, leaving the door open. Lena followed her inside. The place was a mess. Dishes piled in the sink, clothes scattered on the floor, curtains drawn against the daylight. It looked like a crime scene. "Sophia, what's going on?" "Nothing. Everything. Does it matter?" Sophia collapsed onto the couch, pulling a blanket around herself. "Ethan's testifying against his father. The trial starts next month. And I get to watch the man I love destroy his own family on national television." "I'm sorry." "Are you?" Sophia looked at her, her eyes empty. "Because it seems like you got exactly what you wanted. That's not fair." "Isn't it? You hated Ethan. You hated that I had him. And now he's gone, and you're happy. I'm not happy that you're hurting, but you're happy that I lost him." Lena sat down on the other end of the couch. "Yeah, maybe I am. Not because I wanted you to suffer, but because he wasn't good for you. He was lying to you, Sophia. About everything. I know." Sophia's voice broke. "I know that now, but it doesn't make it hurt less. I know it doesn't." They sat in silence for a while. Then Sophia said, "I keep thinking about what you said, about me taking things without looking at the cost. And you were right. I did. I took Ethan without ever asking if you wanted him. I took Mom's attention, Dad's love, all of it. I just took, and I never once thought about what it cost you." "Sophia, no, let me finish." Sophia looked at her, tears streaming down her face. "I was a terrible sister. I still am, and I don't know how to fix it. You don't have to fix it. You just have to be here. That's all." "I don't know if I can." "Then let me help you." Sophia stared at her, something raw and vulnerable in her eyes. "Why would you do that? After everything I did to you?" "Because you're my sister, and because I know what it's like to feel like you're drowning. Someone pulled me up. Let me do the same for you." Sophia's face crumpled. She leaned forward, burying her face in her hands, and sobbed. Lena moved closer, wrapping her arms around her sister, holding her while she broke apart. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a start. Over the next few weeks, Lena visited Sophia regularly. She brought food, helped clean the apartment, sat with her while she cried or raged or stared at nothing. It was hard, exhausting work, but slowly Sophia started to come back to life. One afternoon, as they sat on Sophia's couch eating takeout, Sophia said, "Tell me about Alessandro." Lena looked up, surprised. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. How you met, why you're with him, if you're happy." Lena told her the story, the bus, the fall, the way Alessandro had looked at her like she mattered. Sophia listened without interrupting, her expression unreadable. "He's in love with you," Sophia said when Lena finished. "Yeah, he is." "And you love him?" "Yeah." Sophia smiled, small and sad. "Good. You deserve that." "So do you. Maybe someday." Sophia picked at her food. "But not yet. I need to figure out who I am without Ethan first." "That's smart." "Yeah. Well, I learned it from you." Lena blinked. "What?" "You walked away from everything. Your old life, your old self. You rebuilt. I need to do the same. It's not easy. I know. But I have you. That helps." Lena's throat tightened. "Yeah. You do." By December, Sophia had started therapy. She'd cut her hair, started going to the gym, and was looking for a new job. She wasn't the same person she'd been before. The easy confidence was gone, replaced by something more cautious, more thoughtful. But she was healing, and that was enough. Lena started nursing school in January. The program was intense, the workload brutal. She spent hours studying anatomy and pharmacology, practicing procedures on mannequins, learning how to save lives. It was everything she'd hoped for, and harder than she'd imagined. Alessandro adjusted his schedule to accommodate hers. He'd be there in the mornings to make her coffee, and he'd be there at night to quiz her on medical terminology. He never complained about the late nights or the stress. He just supported her, steady and sure. One night, after a particularly brutal exam, Lena came home to find Alessandro in the kitchen, cooking dinner. "How'd it go?" he asked. "I think I passed." "Maybe." "You passed." He handed her a glass of wine. "You always do." She sank onto a stool at the counter. "I'm exhausted." "I know. That's why I'm making your favorite. You don't have to take care of me." "I want to." He looked at her, his expression serious. "You're building something, Lena. Something important. The least I can do is make sure you have the space to do it." Tears pricked her eyes. "I don't know what I did to deserve you. You existed. That's all." She stood and wrapped her arms around him, pressing her face against his chest. "I love you." "I love you too." They ate dinner together, talking about nothing and everything. And for the first time in a long time, Lena felt like she could breathe. 6 months into nursing school, Lena came home with an idea. She found Alessandro in his office, going over spreadsheets. "Can I talk to you about something?" He looked up. "Always." She sat down across from him. "I've been thinking about what comes next, after I graduate." "But, poprashram." "Okay. I want to start a foundation for women who are trying to rebuild their lives. Women who've been abused, or who've left bad situations, or who just need help getting back on their feet. I want to give them what you gave me, a chance." Alessandro leaned back, studying her. "You want to use my money to do it?" "I want to use our money to do it, if you're willing." A slow smile spread across his face. "I'm willing." "Really?" "Lena, you could ask me for the moon and I'd find a way to get it for you. A foundation? That's easy." She laughed, feeling lighter than she had in months. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. This is your vision. I'm just helping you make it real." Over the next year, they built the foundation from the ground up. Lena worked with lawyers and accountants, developed programs and partnerships, interviewed potential staff. It was exhausting and exhilarating, and more meaningful than anything she'd ever done. The Carter Foundation for Women's Recovery and Education launched on a rainy Saturday in October. The event was small, a gathering at a community center with local politicians, donors, and the first cohort of women the foundation would serve. Lena gave a speech, her voice shaking at first but growing stronger with each word. "I know what it's like to feel invisible," she said. "To feel like you don't matter. To feel like you're stuck in a life you didn't choose and can't escape. But I also know what it's like to be seen, to be given a chance, to rebuild. And that's what this foundation is about, giving women the resources, the support, and the opportunity to become who they were always meant to be." The applause was deafening. Alessandro stood in the back, his expression proud and fierce. And beside him, to Lena's surprise, was Sophia. After the event, Sophia approached her. "That was incredible. You came." "Of course I came. You're my sister." They hugged, awkward at first, then tighter. When they pulled apart, both were crying. "I'm proud of you, Sophia," Sophia said, "for everything." "Thank you. That means a lot." "And I'm sorry for everything I put you through." "I know. Me too." They stood there for a moment, the space between them finally feeling less like a chasm and more like a bridge. "Want to grab coffee sometime?" "Yeah," Sophia asked. "Catch up properly?" "Yeah, I'd like that." 2 years after the night on the bus, Lena stood in Alessandro's house. Her house now, she reminded herself, staring at the mirror. She was wearing a simple white dress, her hair pulled back, her makeup minimal. It was her wedding day. The real one. They'd been married legally for over a year, but this was different. This was a celebration, a declaration that they'd survived the worst and come out stronger. The ceremony was small, held in the garden behind the house. Sophia was there, standing beside Lena as her maid of honor. Her mother came too, tentative but trying. And Alessandro's people, the ones who'd become her people over the last 2 years, filled the rest of the seats. When Alessandro saw her walking toward him, his expression softened in a way that still made her heart skip. He took her hands, his grip warm and steady. "You look beautiful," he murmured. "You're biased." "Damn right I am." The ceremony was short. They said their vows, words they'd written themselves, promises about holding each other up and never letting go. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Alessandro kissed her, and the world fell away. At the reception, Lena danced with Alessandro, with Sophia, with people who'd become family. She laughed until her sides hurt. She cried happy tears. She felt, for the first time in her life, like she belonged exactly where she was. Late in the evening, as the party wound down, Alessandro pulled her aside. "Come with me. I want to show you something." He led her to his office and handed her a folder. Inside were legal documents, deeds, financial statements. "What is this?" she asked. "The foundation. I'm signing over full control to you. It's yours, Lena, completely." She stared at him. "Alessandro, you built it. You made it what it is. It should be yours." "But you funded it. Money's easy. Vision? That's rare, and you have it." He cupped her face. "You're not the girl who fell on that bus anymore. You're someone who changes lives, who builds things, who matters. I'm just making sure the world knows it." Tears streamed down her face. "I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep being exactly who you are." "Okay, I can do that." He kissed her, and she kissed him back, feeling like everything had finally come full circle. 3 years later, Lena stood on a stage at a conference for nonprofit leaders, talking about the foundation's work. They'd served over 200 women, helped dozens get jobs in housing and education. The foundation had grown beyond anything she'd imagined. Sophia sat in the front row, running the foundation's communications. She'd found her purpose there, using her skills to tell the stories of the women they served. Alessandro sat beside her, proud and fierce, his hand resting on the small bump of Lena's stomach. They were having a baby, a girl. They'd found out last week. Another beginning. After the talk, as they walked to the car, Sophia looped her arm through Lena's. "You know what's crazy?" Sophia said. "What?" "If none of this had happened, if Ethan hadn't been a criminal, if Alessandro hadn't been on that bus, where would we be?" Lena thought about it. "I'd probably still be working night shifts, still invisible, still disappearing. And I'd still be planning a wedding to a liar, still taking you for granted. Maybe, but we're not there anymore." "No, we're here, and here's pretty damn good." Lena smiled. "Yeah, it is." That night, as she lay in bed beside Alessandro, his hand resting on her stomach, Lena thought about the girl she'd been, the one who fell on a bus and spilled her broken life at the feet of a stranger, the one who thought she was nobody. That girl was gone. In her place was someone stronger, braver, more whole, someone who'd learned that falling wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of learning how to fly. "You awake?" Alessandro murmured. "Yeah." "What are you thinking about?" "How far we've come. How different everything is." "Good different?" "The best different." He pulled her closer, his lips against her temple. "I love you, Lena Carter DeLuca." "I love you too." She closed her eyes, feeling safe and seen, and completely, impossibly happy. The world outside was still complicated, still messy, still full of pain and struggle, but she'd learned how to navigate it, how to fight for what mattered, how to hold on to the people she loved. And most importantly, she'd learned how to be seen, not by disappearing or making herself smaller, but by taking up space, by being loud, by refusing to let the world forget she existed. She'd spent her whole life invisible. Not anymore. Now she burned bright. And she wasn't going out. Not for anyone.